Good evening, friends. Today, we explore the world of predators and their prey, which follows on the heels of the Anurag Kashyap Payal Ghosh rape case in 2013. Today, we hear news of many actresses like Deepika Padukone, Sara Ali Khan, Rakul, Preet, Shraddha Kapoor being summoned by NCB. These are the very women who have stood with Riya Chakravarti. Ria and Jaya Saha of Quan Talent Agency are the people who have been procuring drugs. This is just for your information. The fact is that Bollywood is filled with these sexual predators who appear decent in front of public, but show their carnal side only in private. They promise to help advance the careers of young women in return for sexual favors. Let us speak about the group who shout against patriarchy. The big producers, the directors, the superstars who lure young women on false pretenses, promising them their big breaks. These men work quietly and appear as feminists in open. But these are the men who humiliate women in closed doors, throwing their weight, threatening of dire consequences, and abusing them. These are the men who can save a movie, make a career of an actor, or crush a young hopeful's career. And since their targets are always young women, they always stand to win. And young women who dare to speak would be subjects to a negative campaign, and her career would be crushed in the bud. Such a woman, an actress, who said she was humiliated, manipulated, and raped in 2013, spoke up this week, Payal Ghosh, when she said that director Anurag Kashyap, on the pretext of giving her a role, raped her in 2013. And this is nothing new in Bollywood. We wonder why she did not speak up at that time. Do some men hold so much sway over their industry that its denizens conspire to protect them at all costs? This is what exactly happened to Anurag, who got immediate support from many. It is this fear within Payal that these men feed on. The fear that what will society say? And will she be banned from films if she doesn't have any other job? Apparently, he also told Payal that actresses like Huma Qureshi, Richa, and Mahi were a phone call away when he needed sexual services. To this, Richa took offense and said she would take legal action against Payal. My request to Richa would be, dear Richa, instead of hitting at Anurag, you are hitting at another victim just like you. But look at what followed. When news came that she was going to file an FIR against Kashyap, the Maharashtra state government locked the area where she lived in as a COVID containment area. Just like what they did to the Bihar top cop who came to Mumbai for investigation. This clearly indicates that Anurag Kashyap is a member of the protected coterie and that he enjoys the special services provided by the Mumbai police too. Payal Ghosh, look at the irony of the Mumbai police. Payal Ghosh was made to wait till 2 a.m. by the Mumbai police at the Warsaw police station, where she went to file a complaint against Kashyap. And finally, she got them to file an FIR against him. But let's see what the action will be after this, because we don't trust them. Please note, like most victims, she was scared to report it. Many people dissuaded her, saying she was too small a fry to take on the system. So it is with much reluctance that she made this open, fearing for her life. Anurag Kashyap represents a section of people who are the protected species. There are many men who are accused, like Anurag Kashyap, Subhash Ghai, Mahesh Bhatt, Sajid Khan, and Morani in Bollywood, who have learned the art of silencing women through threats. There are several reports in the newspapers which elucidate this. And these are all available on public domain. They hit on vulnerable women and men every day, because now we are talking about men as well, because Sushant is a case in point. If you decline to work with them, and if you don't work with them, then you don't work for anyone. That's the sort of rule that they have set. And if you don't abide by the rules, which is in sex, drugs, and behaving like they're slaves, you are crushed. And the government and their machinery will protect them. They are all hand in glove. Those brave enough to kick up a fuss, but pragmatic enough to understand that they would not be believed, were further persecuted, like the famous case of Kangana Ranaut. She spoke about the abuse she faced, and we saw how her office was razed. Furthermore, she was the victim of open mudslinging. Women too joined the frenzy to protect their men. Jaya Baduri and her statement in the Rajya Sabha was an open demonstration of how deep the rotten system had spread its tentacles. If you look at Anurag Kashyap's images in public, he comes across as a very foul and uncouth person, sitting on the laps of young women like Tapsi, or kissing men like Ram Gopal Verma, who can also be described as his kind. Young aspirants were told that it was normal for film dealings to be done with producers in hotel rooms or in their homes. Anurag Kashyap seems to have done a PhD in this area. Actress Kubra Saith said that he made her shoot a nude scene 7 times in Sacred Games for Netflix. She played the role of a transgender character named Cuckoo. She says, after I went to the audition, they told me there's frontal nudity scene. And when you see the show, you can see how beautifully it has been shot, how vulnerable it is. You can never go wrong when you have a great team to work with. So perhaps looking at the aesthetic sense and the fact that the series would stand out, she agreed. Kubra said Anurag Kashyap was one of the directors of Sacred Games. What he did was he poured her a glass of whiskey and read her lines with complete emotions. She further said, he made me do the scene 7 times. Every time after the scene, he'd come to me and say, I'm making you do it so many times. Sorry. Huh? Just one more time. Ek aur bar. One more and I'm going again. Don't hate me. I know you hate me. Don't hate me. Sacred Games, like most of the series films that Bollywood churns out, is set mainly in Mumbai of the 80s and 90s, when encounters between gangsters and the police were common. And film actors pay homage to gangsters during that time was routine. The question you and I would ask Kubra is that why did she oblige in the first case? As this is not Hollywood, where nudity is a part of films. What are her reasons? We don't know. Maybe financial. We must also recall that Kashyap was seen on camera rolling a drug joint and smoking it in one of the videos that is now viral in social media. And his ex wife, Kalki, who supports him openly against Payal, once confessed that during the shooting of Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, the 5 friends would go out, drink together, and roll joints. So, drugs was a part of their life. In an interview in 2017, Kashyap admitted to molesting and abusing a child when he was a teenager. At that time, he says, he was not aware of what sexual assault was. In his later years, when he was in an English medium school, a boarding school, he learnt about masturbation from his classmates. He said, though the feeling was different, somehow it did not feel right. During his junior years, the seniors used to abuse and harass him. He thought it was normal. And he can do the same to someone when he got promoted to a senior class. Accordingly, he harassed a junior student when he became a senior. However, things backfired, and the kid's parents accused him of sexual assault on their child, which makes them, then, if you're looking at all these aspects of Anurag Kashyap, then this makes him a drug addict, a pervert, a molester, a child abuser, a woman stalker, and friend of the underworld. Quite a combination. But is he alone in this? He is just one of the predators. And this is the same man, remember, who stood with the anti CAA protesters, the Tukre Tukre gang, to speak ill about India and our leaders, to openly admit calling Sushant Singh Rajput a problematic man. Look at the one who's speaking. Kashyap's name has been around many controversies many times. And look at the women who are shielding him, his ex wives, Kalki and Aarti Bajaj. In her post, Kalki has written, Dear Anurag, don't let the social media circus get you get to you. You have fought for the freedom of women in your own scripts. You have defended their integrity in your professional space as well as your personal life. What can I say? Maybe they don't want their alimony to be affected, is how I see it. Because it's impossible that any woman can support what he did to Payal Ghosh. Enter the patriarchal world of Bollywood. The conspiracy of silence that protects these carnivores is a toxic combination of a group of powerful parties whose job is to keep their client doing business. This, plus tiny choices made by dozens of individuals who fear for their own fates, are too ashamed to say anything and are unwilling to judge the sexual behavior of others. Very few accusers can withstand the combination of well paid people and bystanders who aren't sure how to act. But this kind of behavior by directors, producers, and actors have been exposed through the ages in our film magazines. It was sort of accepted that couch castings were a part of the Bollywood. Writer Mahima Kukreja accused Subhash Ghai, saying that when she worked with Ghai on a film years ago, he would often call her for script sessions at his apartment. He once forcefully kissed her, but tried to pacify her the next day by calling the incident a lover's tiff. Even though she told the first assistant director and two other women about the incident, they did not take any action. On her part, she had no job or financial security to fight this great director. She said that once after a late music session, Subhash Ghai decided to have a drink and offered her one while he was dropping her home in the car, saying that the drink was spiked. The woman said she remembers being taken to a hotel room and assaulted before she lost consciousness. Subhash Ghai dismissed it as false and said it had become a fashion to malign men in this manner and that he would go for a defamation suit. There are so many cases like this, but I will mention only the ones that made the most sound. Then comes the famous Mahesh Bhatt, the man who was a mentor to Riya. And many photos suggest that she was much more to him. And she seemed to move according to his wishes. When he told her to leave Sushant's flat, the day she did, it meant that he anticipated what was going to happen thereafter. This man also played with Jia Khan, the one who was raped and murdered, the girl who was found hanging. He was also involved in the life of one of the most beautiful women in Bollywood, Praveen Babi, who died a very strange death. Many described Praveen Babi as a sophisticated woman who lived alone and managed her life efficiently. A woman who did not interfere in anything. She would come and sit quietly as in the film set and read a book. She was one of the top actresses in her era. Pritish Nandi described her. Pritish Nandi is the writer and editor. Described her and said that she was a wonderful company, very articulate, a terrific conversationalist, extremely well read. In fact, she had begun to write her memoirs, which she never completed. I had published portions of her intended memoirs in the Illustrated Weekly of India when I edited it. What happened to her was exactly what happened to Sushant, and also echoes that of what Kangana had to undergo. Mahesh Bhatt left his wife and daughter, Pooja, to live with Parveen Babi after her affair with Kabir Bedi was over. She was at the peak of her career when Bhatt said she was suffering from schizophrenia and imagining weird things and that people wanted to attack her. The same kind of manipulation seen in Sushant's case seemed to be reflected in his interview. He said, from then on began a long night of fear and trauma. I had to first come to terms with what was happening to her. Here we are talking about Praveen Babi. Several theories floated, he said. One being the ill-informed one, that being so successful, she had become a wicked victim of black magic and that an evil spirit had invaded her. I got in touch with well known psychiatrists who diagnosed her condition as paranoid schizophrenia, a genetic biochemical disorder. Drug therapy was suggested to keep it normal, but they warned that if drug therapy didn't work, she'd have to be given ECT, which is electric shock therapy. Parveen Babi died a frighteningly lonely death, isolated by her own insecurities and paranoia. She was obsessed with bringing down superstar Amitabh Bachchan, accusing him of all sorts of crime and misdemeanors, from being a spy to a terrorist. She had something against him. But was this the effect of drugs? We don't know. Mahesh Bhatt was living with her. He also said that Parveen Babi never took the medicines he gave her. So he would mix it in her food or drinks. Doesn't this ring a bell? Ria also said the same thing about Sushant, that he would not take his medicines. And it was also later shown in conversations that they were spiking his drinks with drugs. And that once Praveen Babi chased Mahesh Bhatt naked down the stairs and he ran back to his wife and daughter. So was Praveen Babi drugged as Sushant was and made deranged? Also remember that Mahesh Bhatt and Mukesh Bhatt said the same thing about Sushant, that he was going the same way as Parveen Babi. Indicates that there is something deeper. Videos of him snuggling with the late Jia Khan, the young actress, showed him in a very poor light. In fact, it seems Jia said she did not want to work with him. Coming from a well-known family, she could make the choices easily. But then she fell victim to another man's attention and lust. That was Suraj Panchodi. As you will note, Bollywood has traditionally always been a man's domain, where they rule over women in herds. This explains why a majority of production houses are yet to constitute anti-sexual harassment committees. Next, we speak of a man who comes across as repulsive and obnoxious, Farah Khan's brother and Akshay Kumar's best friend, Sajid Khan, the man who directed Houseful and Hamshakal. Key men spoke about the sexual harassment they faced in his hands. These included actor Rachel White, assistant director Saloni Chopra, and a journalist. Saloni wrote in a harrowing ordeal that she faced in his hands, which included talk of whether she would ever get a breast job done, how sex was actually a mental connection, and how she was foolish in thinking that the casting couch was about one-time sex and that it would end after that, and how he wanted her to be the director's assistant and not an assistant director. Rachel, the second woman, also spoke at length about her trauma in a series of tweets. She explained that during the making of Hamshakal, Sajid asked her to come to his house, stared at her breasts, and asked her to strip, on the pretext that her role in the film required her to be in a bikini. She wrote, "I was in a white vest and blue denims, and still I felt I was standing nude with that gaze." What happens next is that he finishes his cardio and walks up to me and asks me about my boobs. And making that kind of conversation, I didn't bother to answer to anything. When she said that her bikini shots were a part of her portfolio, he continued to insist. That's when she said she was ready to do it at his office, but not in his home. To which he replied that people are okay about it, implying that she should not resist. After that, he asked her to strip for him because there were scenes in a bikini and he needed to see how she looked. I replied, "These are pics of me in bikinis sent to you. I think that should be good for you." And when he insisted, I said, "I'm ready to parade in your office in a bikini, not at home." The third case was of a journalist, Karishma Upadhyay. On Twitter, she narrated her tale of harassment by Sajid Khan, who flashed his private parts at her during the course of an interview. Speaking about it, she wrote, "The first time I interviewed Sajid Khan in the early 2000s, he called me to the house he shared with his sister. Through the interview, among other obscene things, which I, as a person, cannot speak because it's so vulgar, he told her that he knows how to satisfy a woman." While the woman spoke out, this woman also spoke out during the Me Too movement. No action was taken on Sajid Khan. Then the incident involving a well-known producer, Kareem Morani, a good friend of Shah Rukh Khan, emerged. He financed films of Shah Rukh Khan like Chennai Express, Dilwale, and was the associate producer of Farah Khan's Happy New Year and Ravan, all Shah Rukh stars. A Delhi-based actress accused Morani of raping her. The actress had shifted to Mumbai in 2014 and knew Murani's family. It was in 2015 when Murani came over to her place with a bottle of wine and forced her to drink. She wrote, "Next thing I knew, I wake up at 4 a.m. I was numb and shocked, physically and mentally. I was in a state of shock. Kareem was not there. I saw there were marks on my body when I woke up," she recounted. "I found the courage and called him the next day. I confronted him and asked him, 'What did you do to me?' I told him I'd call his wife and brother. He just laughed over the phone. I can't forget that laughter. I felt helpless. I was 21," the actress continued. She revealed that later, Morani started blackmailing her by saying, "I'll get you killed by the underworld." She further said that Morani allegedly harassed her several times afterwards using her nude pictures as a ploy. The after effects were that I stopped talking to people, stopped working, became a recluse. It wasn't just one time. He came over a couple of times more. It was the 12th of September 2015, and he calls me and he says, "I want you to come here." I was scared. He'd circulate my nude pictures to my family. He sneaked me into his room. He didn't even let me leave. It did not happen once, but multiple times. And no one supported her or backed her up. At the time the harassment happens, these victims are either naive, very young, unable or unwilling to talk to others who had endured the same offenses, or terrified that further investigating about the rumors they had heard would come at a very steep cost. Remember, all these women are looking for jobs. And what these predators are doing is they put drugs like ecstasy into their drinks and they exploit them. You would recall this was the same thing that happened with a young Kangana when she said that Aditya Pancholi entered her life and started drugging her and abusing her. How he controlled her life and made her think that she was going crazy. The fact that Kangana had the strength to fight back and return and start life on her own terms is amazing. But this happens only to very few women who've got the inner strength. This is now happening to Payal Ghosh. We also spoke, remember, about Anirban, the CEO of Kwan, in our previous videos. The talent agency that manages Deepika Padukone, Ranbir Kapoor, Shruti Hassan, among others. How Anirban used to molest women and how he was exposed by three women who were aspiring to be models or actresses, and how he tried to commit suicide when they found out about him. The strange fact is that he is still in the company. That is the news coming to us. He has not been removed. More strange is the fact that Salman Khan washes his hands of Kwan and says he has no role in Kwan. These big producers, directors, actors, when attacked, they gather, this is the modus operandi. What they do is they gather unflattering material on their accusers. and deploy their friends in the tabloid media to feed them intelligence and dirt about them and figure out who's talking to the press. Then the threats and the blackmail start till the victims either give in or they disappear. Photos of Mahesh Bhatt resting his head on Ria's breast is common, or even Anurag's pictures sitting on Tapsi's lap. They are immune to attack. They are, as I said, the protected species. Then there is a powerful faction of silencers that keep the Kashyap's, the Bhatts, the Sajid Khans, the Moranis of the world from being discovered. Bollywood, with its powerful forces, as in government, police, and underworld, allows these sexual predators to thrive. What remains to be seen is whether the rapid demolishing of the persona of some of these people in the Sushant case will create a new environment, one in which people feel emboldened to speak up, and a new era of professionalism and a monitoring agency safeguarding the industry will be set up. I hope people like Yogi Adityanath will take this into consideration when he sets up the film city in UP. Thank you, friends, for this session, and also for the fact that you're following me in larger numbers, and also the comments that you are sending me, which are really very, very applaudable, and some of them are also being posted on Twitter. Thank you.